Very good morning, Namaste, Jai Hind to everyone. Very hearty and warm welcome to today's speaker, Professor Mani. Uh, I also welcome all participants who have joined, and particularly the students. Good number. We have good number of students. They are very keen to listen today to Professor Mani on changing scenario in higher education. Before I formally invite Professor Mani for his talk, I have two announcements. One is on second, we have a very good Sanjeevani meeting that was the speaker was Rotary Rakesh Rilan, and he spoke on digital security. It was attended by large number of students and teachers. So thank you, Rakesh ji. On fifth, we have Raila, which was conducted by Rotarian Anuradha, who is director Interact Club and membership growth. So thank you, Anuradha, and particularly I would like to extend my thanks to all those members who participated on that day. There was a good participants, and all enjoyed the talk given by Group Captain Ashwini Kumar Bhaku. The talk was on emotional wellness, and he addressed two things: how to identify the stress and how to handle it. And this session was completely for 2 hours, and chief guest was the chairperson, Raila District 3131. Second announcement, which I would like to share with the dear Riversiders, is regarding club assembly, which is scheduled on coming Wednesday, the same time, 8:30. I would request all Riversiders to kindly join because we have to take a lot of important decisions on that day. So with these, I would like to announce. I would like to invite Rotarian Prerna Gaikwad for secretarial announcements. Over to Prerna.
A very good morning to everyone here today. But December, as we know, normally is a month where there's a lot of celebration and cheer. So we have a lot of birthdays and anniversaries in December. Starting with tomorrow, we have Anne Dolly Gupta's birthday. 11th December is Rotarian Sandeep and Parul Vaish's wedding anniversary. My wedding anniversary. And on 12th, we have Anne Shikha Gupta's birthday. Lots more in the following week. So here's a very happy birthday in advance and a happy anniversary to everyone present. Thank you. Back to you, Colonel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now it is time. We are very eager. We don't waste even single minute. So it's time for formal introduction and welcome of today's guest speaker, keynote speaker, Professor Mani. So I would like to invite Director Rotarian Ganesh Natarajan, Director Corporate and Youth Connect, to do this honor. So over to Ganesh ji.
Sure, thank you and good morning to all of you, and thank you, Professor Mani, for accepting our invitation. And I'm also delighted that some students are here because I think apart from various things that Professor Mani does, he has been instrumental in the phenomenal growth of the ITM group of institutions. And I know the founder, Professor Ramana, extremely well. And between him and Professor Mani, I think the kind of growth, the number of campuses, the formation of the university, all that has been a great, stellar contribution of Professor Mani. You've read the resume, but for the benefit of students, Professor Mani is an alumnus of Tata Institute of Social Sciences, also a gold medalist MBA in HR, and he has been, as I mentioned, doing a lot of work in education as well as in consulting. And like me, he has multiple interests. In fact, the last project we collaborated together was for the Bombay Management Association, where we put together a very successful social agenda, which is, really scaling social enterprises. As all of us know, the social environment is very important for the future of this country. And we got some speakers from the US, from Australia, from all over the country to really talk about what they are doing and what their aspirations is. So I think Professor Mani, of course, is the president of Bombay Management Association this year and also plays a stellar role in all aspects of management for the city of Bombay. And again, as some of you may know, the Bombay Management Association is one of the prominent local management associations of the All India Management Association. So truly delighted, Professor Mani, to have you with us. And I'm sure you can share with us many things on the art of management, on how students should look at their journeys, and of course, the growth of higher education in this country. So over to you, sir, and thank you very much.
Namaskar, Suprabhat, and good morning, everybody. Thank you, Colonel Mishra, for welcoming me to your Rotary Club. A special mention to Dr. Ganesh Natarajan. It's very humbling when someone of the stature of Ganesh introduces you to a larger audience. He's always been a mentor, a guide on several aspects of improving the quality of higher education and improving the quality of management practices in the country. Thank you, everybody, for finding the time to be here at 8:30 this morning. And that itself is a very heartening way to begin the discussion. What I propose to do is to spend the first 20 minutes sharing some perspectives about various aspects of higher education, the way ahead, what are the changing scenarios, and what should we be doing to cope up with these. I'll be delighted to spend the next half an hour discussing various aspects, various questions that you might have in your mind. Trust me, as a professor, I can speaking on and on and on for a very long time, but I thought it will be more meaningful on a Zoom platform to have more interaction, and therefore I'm setting aside that time for questions. Being in higher education today for the last 32 years, I think that is confirmed by the gray hair on my beard. I want to particularly welcome all the young minds who are here, the students. I think I have been teaching from the time some of you might not even been born. And many people in this audience are as senior to me. Therefore, I'd like to urge everybody to listen to my perspectives. These are not necessarily the gospel truth, but these are based on my experience and interactions with people in the field of higher education. When I define higher education, we are talking about education that commences at the degree college. So you would be doing a bachelor's, you could be doing a master's, you might even be doing a PhD. Some of you, I'm sure in this audience, have children who are studying in this bandwidth, either pursuing bachelor's or master's or even the PhD programs. It is obvious what we have seen over the last 9 months. The pandemic has hastened the manner in which India has embraced digital learning. So the biggest change that we have seen in the space of higher education is how digital learning has become a way of life for every one of us. And I think this is a future which many of us in the space of higher education expected. But the acceleration with which it happened was perhaps not expected. But hats off to the education community, the students in particular, and the faculty at large who took up to this and ensured that the entire learning process was done on the digital platform. Many of you have started wondering about your own children who are in the higher education space. Is the term ever going to begin this year? Are there going to be enough contact classes? Will the campuses reopen? I think a lot of questions still unanswered. But I think the way ahead, in my mind, is simply a blended learning that is going to be the order of the day. We will continue to have digital education and we will also have physical education. No wonder people have started coining catchphrases such as phygital education. That is, physical plus digital is equal to phygital. Nevertheless, the message here is clear. Higher education going ahead will be a form of blended learning. Which brings me to my second point. World over, including India, so many digital learning platforms have taken our attention. Call it Coursera, edX, Udemy, or even if we look at the so many Indian portals like Swayam, Swayamprabha, and so many other DTH channels who are providing education. I think the way we learn has gradually started changing. There is greater emphasis on self-learning, self-paced learning, and also ensuring that we are able to learn in an interactive format. So the role of the teacher, I think, has changed in higher education significantly. When Google came in, everyone was saying that Google has so much of information. What more is the teacher going to give us? But they didn't realize that information is not it all. The conversion of information into knowledge is facilitated by the teacher. And therefore, the role of the teacher now is not of information disseminator, but the role of the teacher has changed into clarifier, doubt resolver, catalyst to the learning process. And I think this is a significant change we have seen in the higher education space. Many of my colleagues about 20 years ago, when Google started capturing our minds and it intensified over the last decade, started worrying about their own jobs. Would we be redundant? Would students entirely depend on digital? None of which actually happened. In fact, in lighter vein, we always told our teaching fraternity, 2G might come, 3G might come, 4G and 5G might come, but don't worry, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, but you can never replace the Guruji. And I think this is exactly what has happened in the learning space today. The teacher in higher education has become the catalyst to the learning process, the enabler to the learning process, and has ensured that the student is able to continue on the learning journey for a very, very long time. This brings in a third dimension. When you do your own learning through various education portals, though they are wonderful courses, what about the certification? What about the qualification that you acquire from these? Are these going to be recognized by industry for employment purposes? Or is industry still going to look at the traditional educational degrees? Call it the bachelor's in management, or the bachelor's in biotechnology, or a bachelor's in computer science to begin with, or an MBA, or a master's in mass communication, or a master's in architecture. Is industry going to look at the traditional degrees only? What is going to be the value of the learning that you acquire on the digital platform through several such leading internationally acclaimed portals? I'm sure over the last 9 months, many of you sitting in this audience have had the opportunity to use some of these learning platforms. And I'm sure you'll agree with me, their courses are well conceived. Many of them are hugely value adding. Here is the debate that automatically comes in. Are we looking at certification or are we looking at qualification? My recommendation would be, and this is open for discussion because many of you I know in this group are either entrepreneurs or several leading senior management of different organizations. Are we going to look at a blend of qualification and certification? How are we going to identify talent for our organizations in these changing times as one would look at it? And that is the third dimension that we spoke about when we are looking at higher education. The first one was the fact that digital has become a way of life. Going ahead, it will be a combination of digital and physical. The second dimension was that the role of the teacher is slowly changing into being a catalyst and enabler, a supporter of the entire learning cycle of the student. And therefore, the third dimension that came in was about the importance of qualification versus certification and how it is going to impact the entire industry hiring process. And this brings me to the fourth point, and that is to do with employment. Many campuses have always said that we make our students employable. Today, industry is saying you don't make them employable alone, make them employable to suit my needs. And here is where we see a shift once again. It is not enough to say that a student is specialized in retail. There are retail organizations who are saying now, I want students who are specialized not only in retail, but let us say in digital retail, because I am Amazon, and for me, digital is the easiest way to reach the customer. Or you have an example of Reliance, which is in two formats broadly. Reliance Digital, of course, what you call the JioMart, which is the digital format, and you also have the Reliance Superstores, which is the physical format. So when I'm talking about retail, which aspect am I talking about? And therefore, we see a trend these days. Many organizations are partnering with academia to co-create courses for students which will make them ready for employment in their own organizations. So the institute which I am from, the ITM group of institutions, we have tie-ups with several banks such as ICICI, Kotak, several NBFCs, where we hire students keeping in mind their requirements. They help us devise the curriculum to be taught. They even send their trainers to do special sessions for these identified students, at the end of which, a period of 6 months, 1 year, or even 18 months, the student is ready for employment in that organization. I hope you realize that I'm emphasizing on creating the right profile for employment in an organization. I'm not talking about creating employable students for an industry segment called banking. And you'll be surprised if I told you the requirements of each bank vary from one another. A certain bank says, I'm happy with 12th pass with good English and good communication and knowledge of local language to sell credit cards. Another bank says, I will insist on a graduate to do this. Starting from basic eligibility criteria, there are huge differences when it comes to creating the right profile for the respective organizations. So ladies and gentlemen, I was pointing to you the importance of employability vis-a-vis getting students ready for employment in those particular organizations. And the fifth point that I'd like to make here is that there is a huge emphasis today on the importance of soft skills. Not that it was ever considered unimportant, but I think today it has gained more and more importance. In the short run, students who have been working in the digital platform are even doing internships online. And therefore, there is a huge need for them to be able to communicate effectively on the telephone through a Zoom conversation, come up with the right attitude, be seen as having the right corporate etiquette and manners. And trust me, this entire gamut of soft skills is today become very, very important. One of the most important things that we tell students, especially about conversation, whether it be in an interview, whether it be talking to a customer, or whether it be even talking to your faculty and teachers and industry guides, conversations need to be authentic. And the beginning of an authentic conversation is the right stepping stone to success in any discussion. And therefore, we coach the students and enable them with this attitude that how you speak is as important as what you say. And I repeat once again, how you speak is as important as what you say. And this is the foundation of enabling authentic conversations. So soft skills, personality development, grooming, etiquette, manners, behavior has become very, very important. I repeat, it was never understated, but I think now it is overstated as the most important dynamic as far as any interaction between an individual student and a corporate goes. Last but not the least, there is so much debate, discussion about the new education policy which has come up. I'm not going very deep into it because many of you have read it. It has been discussed threadbare in so many forums. But I'd like to highlight what are the good things that will emerge out of the whole thing. The first benefit would be the fact that we are looking at liberal arts becoming a very, very important component of the education process for one and all. The other benefit is the flexibility that is going to be available to students. Like I, for one, always believe that students of medicine need to do a course in psychology because we've already heard enough tales about good doctors, great doctors, but they are not able to communicate as effectively to the patient. They are not able to inspire that confidence. The patient feels afraid of the doctor. Now, that's a very amusing thing to say. The doctor is a person one would trust infinitely. And that is where we say certain liberal arts, humanities courses need to be part of even the basic science streams. This flexibility, what is offered in the new education policy, is going to be a blessing for all the student community in time to come. The third interesting thing of the NEP is the fact that there is a stepwise education process possible. It used to exist in the past before in some courses. You could do a diploma in engineering and after a couple of years, come back and complete your degree. Now, we are kind of moving towards a model where this could be perhaps possible for all courses. For example, you study for 2 years, get a diploma after 10th standard, or 3 years. After a couple of years, come back and study for another 3 years, get your degree. And then if you want to do your master's, you can do it at any point in time. So stepwise education, stepwise certification, and stepwise upgradation of one's knowledge skills. This, I think, is a very, very interesting dimension which has actually come in as part of the NEP. Before I sign off in terms of what I wanted to deliver, I strongly recommend, and this is an appeal to Rotary clubs, this is an appeal to so many industrialists who are present in this meeting. I think we need to enable learning anywhere, everywhere, anytime. It's not so easy to always do it on a smartphone. Sometimes the screen size is very small. It's not very easy to read an Excel document on a mobile phone. Many of us will agree. Therefore, I would urge that we move into a concept of what I call ATL, Anytime Learning Kiosks. Anytime learning kiosks can be set up by social organizations, by corporates too. They could be at a mall, they could be at the airport, they could be at the railway station, they could be at the bus stand where a lot of people transit, and they should contain a lot of self-learning courses of duration 20 minutes to 2 hours, depending on the course and the depth of coverage that is required. Just visualize, next time your flight is delayed, instead of just playing on the handphone or continuing to clear up all the WhatsApp messages which you haven't seen for many, many weeks, can I get into an anytime learning kiosk and do a bit of a course, let us say on artificial intelligence? Can I do a 20-minute on branding? Can I do a 1-hour lesson in 2 parts on etiquette, manners, grooming? This is valid not only for students, but any one of us who are part of this conversation. I've been sharing this thought with many people that at some stage, about 15, 20 years ago, there was some such learning kiosk set up by the initial players in the digital learning space. But unfortunately, it did not sustain because sooner or later, everybody moved around with their own laptop and subsequently with their own handphones. But this still is the urban population. If we look at rural India, what they call Bharat, I think a concept like this would deliver huge benefits. And of course, today geography is history because of the digital entire approach to digital learning. There are no barriers of distance. I'm addressing a group of people in Pune sitting in Mumbai. That's the smallest understanding of how there are no barriers in terms of distances and geography. And therefore, what we normally recommend is anytime learning kiosks, I think is an idea which the future should hold for all of us, where students, executives, managers, any one of us who has that hunger for learning is able to get those courses immediately pre-packed and ready for us. Unfortunately, what happens is the internet has so much of learning and information, sometimes sieving through it and collecting it and identifying the right one might still take a lot of time and energy. And this is where perhaps a lot of people lose interest in the whole process. To summarize, I've always believed that in this world around us, we come across three types of people. The first type of people, they make things happen. The second, they watch things happen. But I think, unfortunately, there's a larger group of people who will be defined by the third statement I make. And I repeat, there are three types of people. One who make things happen. The second, they watch things happen. But the third, they wonder what happened. And I believe if we are not able to rise to the occasion, if we don't put our best foot forward, if we don't throw in that bit of enthusiasm and initiative, every one of us, we might end up wondering what happened in this digital revolution that higher education is going through. In this scenario where the way we shop, the way we interact with each other, the way we conduct meetings, all of it has changed in the last 9 months. How much of it will continue to stay is what time will tell us. And many of you would be experiencing the blended approach at this point in time. Thank you very much for your patient listening. As promised, I have finished what I wanted to share in 20 minutes. And I'd be delighted to have a discussion, hear some views, and try to answer some questions if they are on top of your mind. Over to you, Colonel Mishra.
Thank you, Professor Mani. In fact, it is eye-opener, and you have shared a lot of different dimensions. And I am sure that this question answer session is going to be very live, and a lot of questions are going to be there. So, doing this honor to moderate this question answer session, I would like to invite Rotarian Sanjay Merchant, who is Director Program and Club Admin. Over to Sanjay.
Yeah, thank you, Colonel sir. Yeah, Professor Mani, I would really relate to what you had said, because my own son wanted to do a course in gaming. And in India itself, there were no gaming courses. Even then, we put him through it. And he did his master's then from Scotland, and today he's doing PhD in gaming. So what you said about the certificate and about this thing was very much true for all that. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Appreciate.
Any questions, anyone, please? Yeah, Sandeep ji. Sandeep ji, go ahead.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Professor Mani.
Namaskar.
Namaskar. I mean, having had this good fortune of going through formal education, I realized one thing, and I don't know whether others will agree with that or not, but in the same subject, at different times, I've got anywhere between 2 to 3 out of 10 to 10 out of 10. And majorly the difference was the teacher. I was not the kind who would go home and study. I mean, for me, class was whatever it was, and that was the end of the education. Now, what I felt was that how interesting the subject the teacher makes is how many people are going to be eventually doing well in that subject. So more than what education you impart, what interest you inculcate is probably a bigger factor in success of your students. This is what I feel, and I would definitely like to have your thought and opinion on that, because you are the person who's qualified to make a statement.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying, and I'm fully with you. Two things make the student's learning journey most relevant. One is the ability of the teacher to inspire the student to learn that subject by making it as interesting and as relevant. Unfortunately, what happens in our system is we judge the student's knowledge based on his ability to write answers in the examination process. And therefore, I think what needs to change for the better to enable the teacher to inspire more students to do well is that system has to focus on the practical aspects. It's not enough to understand what is a vernier caliper in physics, but how to use it. It's not enough to study the chemical table, but the various aspects of it and how the combination of different atoms create new composite products. So role of the teacher, very, very important. And it's so delightful to hear that from a parent, from a person who is a veteran in industry, that teachers play a very, very significant role. I think the little difficulty that India faces as a country is teaching is not the first choice profession for many people. If I take a trip down memory lane, 32 years ago, I gave up my job in Wipro Computers to become a professor at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. And trust me, I was not worried about log kya kahenge, because everyone around me said, you are a mad fellow. Wipro Computers was the company to be in the year 1988, when it was being converted from a Vanaspati company to a super brand that it exists today called Wipro. So teaching is never a first choice profession. No offense to the ladies in this room. In good old days, they used to say that ladies can become teachers. Subah jao, dopair ko aa jao, fir ghar sambalo. There is no pressure. Zarurat pade to tuitions le lo. Lot of senior people used to tell me, even the men folk, again, apologies, I don't mean to hurt anybody. I plan to take up teaching after retirement. You're welcome. We still have a lot of teachers who are 60 plus, who are outstanding teachers because they blend what is the practical knowledge from industry and the theoretical knowledge that they start acquiring by reading in plenty. But we also know this for a fact. A lot of people post 60 have lost the fire in the belly. They want to look at a little bit of comfort. They want to settle down, relax, go for a world tour, spend time with the family, do some social work. I think that's also a great thing. But saying that I will take up teaching as a second career sometimes is not as motivating for many people. So the answer to what you are suggesting, and I'll be happy if forums like Rotary can initiate a movement where we inspire the younger generation to become teachers early in life. If I were to again share my personal experience, I started teaching at the age of 24. And I used to sometimes feel shocked when I went to teach the executive education students. Almost everyone in the class was older than me. So I used to get shivers when I went into the class in the initial few days. But I guess God has been kind. We continue to work hard and see what best we can do. So the inspirational teacher is something who can make a huge amount of difference to anybody's career, is something I endorse, and I hope that we can inspire more and more people to get into this profession. Last but not the least, teaching jobs are still not very paying. They are not as remunerative. They don't come with the incentives that a corporate job in industry carries. And therefore, by the same logic, the younger generation perhaps looks at this as a secondary option. If we can make the salaries better, I know there are pay commissions coming and going, but trust me, a lot of it is still on the drawing board. By the time it gets implemented, the gap is sometimes anywhere between 2 to 5 years, and the benefit ultimately doesn't reach the teacher till we are due for the next pay commission revision. This is unfortunate in many institutions, and that is where we still have a challenge of attracting talent in this segment. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Saab. On the lighter note, you said that walking into a room of students and finding that everybody is senior to you was a shivering experience. I would think the other way around today. If I walked into a classroom and I found everybody junior to me, I would be very scared because they probably would know more about everything than what I know.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely valid point. Appreciate that.
Yeah. Rushindi,
Sanjay, can I ask question?
1 minute. Anuradha, we still have
yeah.
people in line.
Okay.
Ruchin, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Sanjay ji. Good morning, Professor Mani.
Good morning.
I'll just give you a little background. So I'm Ruchin Gupta, and your topic, like changing scenario in higher education, interests me a lot because I myself went for higher education after being in job for almost a decade. So I did my MBA from Stern School of Business in New York, right? And there I realized one thing, that Indian students, mostly in corporate careers, where they get stuck is for two reasons. Number one, they choose the field as IT or something, not fully realizing what they have in future for them, right? And after 4 or 5 years in a particular industry, they realize, oh, this is not where I wanted to be, but now I'm too much deep into it. I'm working on proprietary technologies and it's very difficult for me to change. And that's one reason that their career growth kind of gets hampered. And the other one is that Indian students are not taught anything about politics in the classrooms. And in the corporate world, that is one thing that a certain stage comes where more than your technical skills, your soft skills and your how you maneuver people, how you move up the ladder becomes more important, right? So I don't know, like I wanted to get your views on this, that how should we train students? Because when they are going for higher education, they are already too much deep into it where their career is probably hampered. They are already jeopardized. So how can we make that change where when they enter their first job, they know exactly what they want, what they are looking for, and how to proceed from there?
All right, I think that's a very profound question, and I'll take it up into three parts. The first thing that we have tried to do, at least in our institution, ITM, and we encourage all of you to think about this, is please ensure that to the extent possible, children are given career counseling as early as 10th standard. Now, unfortunately, in India, what happens is very often people equate going to a career counselor to going to some psychiatrist. They kind of say, अरे इसके पास क्यों जाना है, इसको तो पता है, या मैं जानता हूं मेरी बेटी क्या करेगी. You know, those kinds of mindsets are still prevalent. Sorry to say that. So going to a career counselor is seen as a very, not a priority activity, or you will do it chupke, because you can't tell everybody I went to a career counselor. They'll say, "Arey, you don't know what your child should be doing." So we are encouraging this in schools, in colleges. I'm delighted to share that about 4 months ago, on the Rotary platform of Navi Mumbai, I did a career guidance seminar for students where we involved even the parents and tried to tell them a couple of things. Don't force your career choices on the children. Give them an opportunity to identify what their interests are. It's nothing wrong in going to a career counselor. Do an aptitude test to help identify. So this, I believe, is a good starting point. And this has to be done in 10th, 12th, and if required, after graduation. So this is one systematic approach starting right from the beginning. Now, as you rightly said, Gupta ji, there are many people who take a career break and then do an MBA because it helps them grow the corporate ladder. Now, the problem is in India, we do not have enough recognized part-time MBA courses. And the market for fly-by-night operators, people who give you so-called MBAs, which are not academically sound, which are not academically recognized by the UGC, are plenty. And therefore, the student, by virtue of the media pull and the advertising, often ends up getting into a course which is very glamorous, but unfortunately unrecognized. And then when he comes back to his company and says, I did my MBA from this school of management, you realize that it is not even a proper MBA degree. And once again here, I urge every individual who is perhaps in the middle of his career, or if you have your children at that stage, please encourage them to go for career guidance, even in the middle of their careers. Because in the rat race that everyone runs in corporate, you do not keep up with what's happening in the education world around you. And unfortunately, we fall prey to attractive advertisements, bulk discounts, free laptop being provided, and all such marketing sops. And at the end of it, maybe you don't do a degree which has that valid recognition as far as the education system goes, whether it be India, UK, Canada, USA, anywhere for that matter. So I would encourage all companies to even have a career counseling session for all their executives. Let us say at the middle of their careers, when they are 30 years old, when they are 40 years old. When was the last time anyone who's still in corporate service at this point in time did a reflection on your own careers? Maybe in Corona times you had some extra time and you could do it. But if you were part of the rat race, perhaps it was not happening. Last point which Gupta ji you made, I mentioned to you that soft skills is something we have started inculcating at the student level. Very often in many campuses, including ITM, we do what is called a transition program, migrating from campus to corporate. How to understand the corporate realities, how to understand how to work in a team, how to ensure that you are able to transition effectively. And the first thing we tell the student is, don't think that with your MBA degree, you have a halo around your head and you're going to transform the corporation you join. In fact, we tell them something different. We tell them that all these years the companies existed without you. So don't think that you are going to do something magical from day one. First, understand what they do, get used to the practices, norms, and then try to suggest change. Understand what's happening first before you start saying that I'm going to bring about a transformation in that organization. So this is something we have always encouraged. And I agree with you, though in lighter vein, I will say I would rather teach my students how to manage their growth in the organization than to maneuver their growth in the organization. Because sometimes what does happen is when students go with this idea that they can play politics and rise the ladder of the organization, they may succeed in the short run, you'll agree with me, but I think in the long run, the consistent quality is what is going to make a difference. So well noted points, and I have shared some of my perspectives. I hope you appreciate them.
Thank you. They are really thoughtful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Prerna, you're next.
Yeah. Good morning, Professor.
Morning.
I can completely relate with what you all are saying because third year in my engineering, I realized engineering wasn't for me. So I did my commerce externally side by side, wasted a year, worked, and then did my MBA. So I think this is the need of the hour for everyone. And my question is basically regarding the NEP. While it has a lot of pros to it, I just wanted to ask you your opinion about teaching the first formative years in the mother tongue. Because I was having a discussion with a couple of friends where places like Bombay, Pune are very cosmopolitan places. You have people from all over the country who've come here. Studying in Marathi or Hindi for someone who's probably come down from the south or come down from the north or from the east is very difficult. So even if children are taught in the mother tongue, that is Marathi or Hindi, students will probably pick up, but the parents are clueless as to how to explain that to their students later. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a very valid point, and there's a lot of debate on this going on also. And one of the suggestions that has been given is that this could be an option and should not be mandated, which might mean in a school today in Mumbai, for example, or I'm sure in Pune, you have English medium, you have Marathi medium, and you have Hindi medium. And depending on what is comfortable to you because of your background, you could choose which medium of instruction you want to take. And after a couple of years, you blend it into one common medium, which is the English medium. How much ever we may say India and Bharat, I still think the language of business is English universally, not only across India, across the world, obviously, but even in India, whether you are in Tamil Nadu or you are in Uttar Pradesh or you end up in Maharashtra, the one common language that business understands is English. Yes, knowledge of local language could always be an asset for anybody in the communication process, in the negotiation process, etc., etc. So I think this is an idea that still needs to be debated a little more. If it is being done to help the rural student understand the concepts better before he or she migrates into the urban setting, then maybe I think it's a good idea to start that way. but whether it should be imposed across for all students, irrespective of whether what their background is, I think is a tough call. I'm comparing this simply with what is called the state board and the central board. The central board was created because it could enable people to transfer across India and still maintain the same curriculum and not affect the student's career when parents were in transferable jobs in the government or the public sector. And the state boards were created as far as the requirements of the state went. And therefore, the local language emphasis was Marathi in Maharashtra and Tamil in Tamil Nadu. So I share your anxieties, and I hope some more debate comes through it and it becomes an approach which is more optional than enforced.
Yeah, Prerna, good enough?
Yeah, thank you so much. Good enough. Thank you so much.
Anuradha, you're next.
Yeah. Do we have time?
Yeah,
No
yeah,
problem, no?
Sure. We
Yeah.
have time. We have time.
Yeah. Professor Mani, good morning. This is
Morning.
Anuradha Mungi. I think I met you.
Oh.
But anyway, let me come back quick with a question. What I believe is that the standards of evaluation, that is examination system, has been lowered down in order to allow all the students with a lower proficiency, lower marks, and lower knowledge who are enrolled into the college to be able to pass. See, if you ask a question 2 plus 3, everybody passes. Why don't you ask a question whereby there is a minimum knowledge limit? What will happen the first year? 70% will fail. But next year only 10% will fail because they will catch up with the standards which are required for evaluation. Today, May comes me to our interview. He says, you know what? I passed, no? Why do you say I don't know my subject? I said, which book did you read? I read Navneet. I said, don't you read a Peter Drucker anymore in the college? So my question to Professor Mani, don't you think all the teachers should think about improving the evaluation or examination standards?
100%. It's not only the teacher, but I think even the system should have more stringent forms of evaluation where you are able to evaluate a student completely. Now, very often what we come across is, especially in the junior college and degree college, before they come to do an MBA with us, the students have an examination system, even for subjects like psychology, sociology, where the practical element is not tested at all. Projects are not done. There are no quizzes and cross-questioning. There are no presentations for the students to make. It is just learning from one textbook or one guide, as you suggested by the ever-famous Navneet or anybody, and pass the exams. So the system first has to enforce that one needs to have multiple evaluation techniques. Let me name a few which one would use or come across in an MBA program in ITM and elsewhere. We have the written exam, we have student-led presentations, we have group work and submission of a written project, we have quizzes which go on a concurrent basis, perhaps every month, and last but not the least, we have presentations in front of external panel from industry. Now, I must confess, all this means a huge amount of extra work for the teacher. So unless the teacher is sufficiently motivated to spend that extra time and energy on all this, it's very easy for the teacher to set a question paper which perhaps doesn't change for 1 or 2 years. And in lighter vein, they say that the questions may be the same, but I'm going to give marks depending on the answers. Correct. But then where is the upgradation? I've often believed, and we try to enforce this in our system, that as much as a student comes to the classroom to learn, every teacher must invest at least about 20 days of a year in their own self-learning, self-certification, and self-upgradation. So point is absolutely valid. We need to set higher benchmarks. We need to have a system that encourages a multiple approach to evaluation. And we need to motivate and encourage teachers to set those high benchmarks and ensure that they could be met. Ultimately, we rightly say, isn't it, that if you want to grow and develop surround yourself by people who are better than you. But sometimes what we end up doing is we surround ourselves with people who are not better than us. Therefore, we get a pseudo feeling that we are the best, and we end up living in a fool's paradise. And therefore, it is rightly said, every morning, let's ask this question: how can I make things better? There is nothing like a zenith or the best. These are nice to hear. Today, a college might say we were ranked first, but then it's only a matter of 1 year before the ranking process would happen again. And sometimes I feel the ranking activity in India has also become another business, because every Tom, Dick, and Harry wants to rank you. And then that ends up confusing the customer, which is the student and the parent. Anyway, that's not the topic of discussion. So I am with you, Anuradha, when you say we must improve the benchmarks, set higher standards so that we can move towards excellence for the entire profession and fraternity.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, Colonel Mishra, back to you.
Thank you, Sanjay ji, and thank you, Professor Mani. In fact, it's very enlightening, very educating, and mind blowing.
Thank you.
It reminds us as if we are in class and professor has given a talk, and we have a lot of questions. We could know that there will be a lot of questions, and the way you have handled it's amazing. So once again, thanking you for joining today morning as a keynote speaker. In fact, we are looking forward. There is I want to share with you. There is one Sanjeevani Riverside, which is flagship of Rotary Club Pune Riverside, and we are targeting students and teachers. Basically, it is student centric, but teachers, our target is 1,000, and students we are targeting about 15,000 to empower them by giving them knowledge, skill, and share the things like that. So the most important thing which came today in my mind, see, the career counseling. This is particularly for 9th and 10th. I remember when my daughter was in 9th and she was the student of St. Helena's. The career counseling was organized by school itself. So for that, in fact, I am looking forward sometime when you are available. We would like to have you as a keynote speaker over Sanjeevani Riverside platform, and we will like to invite parents, teachers, and students also. So I will be talking to you separately on this issue, and
sure.
I'm highly impressed. The way you have taken up. So before going for formal vote of thanks, I would like to extend my thanks, and I would like to welcome Mrs. Manda Astekar, who is the computer guru of St. Helena's. She has joined, and about 20 students, and I must say these 20 to 25 students are joining our morning meeting regularly, and they are the future, and they are the keen learner. In fact, it is not mandatory for them. We have just shared on Sanjeevani Riverside group. So I would like to welcome all those 20, 25, 20, 21 students from my core effort, and I would like to mention during even Sanjeevani platform talk. So not taking much time, now I would like to invite Rotarian Ruchin Gupta, who is the immediate past president and director IT, to extend formal vote of thanks to Professor Mani and all participants. So over to Ruchin Gupta.
Thank you, Mr. President, for giving me the opportunity to extend the formal vote of thanks to a person of repute of Professor Mani. Professor Mani, it was indeed a pleasure to have you as the keynote speaker in our weekly meeting today. And when I saw the topic, I was particularly impressed about higher education. But the points that you conveyed, like starting from phygital education and how the role of teacher and employability versus employment, and how to create the courses rather than just follow the conventional courses, it shows the depth with which you have thought about the process, and you are impacting the industry And definitely the students, your students are very lucky to have you as their professor.
Thank you.
Not lot of us have had that kind of opportunity to learn from a learned person like you. So once again, on behalf of the club, I extend my sincere thanks. And as our president, Colonel Mishra mentioned, it would be again great to see you in some of our other programs as counseling for students and parents. So
Absolutely. Whenever you invite me, I will come.
It will be absolutely pleasure, our pleasure. We will looking forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you for being with us today, and it was indeed a pleasure for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruchinji, and thank you, Professor Mani. Professor Mani, this thought of the week is the healthy tradition of Rotary Club Pune Riverside. So, for bringing out the thought of the week, I would like to invite Rotarian Prerna Gaikwad, who is club secretary. So, over to Prerna.
Yeah, thank you very much, Colonel. Just listening to Professor talk today reminded me something of what my principal told me when we were passing out from the 10th standard. What she said is, the future of the world is in my classroom today. So each one of you is my child, my responsibility. So listening to you talk has just taken me back right over there, back to when we were in school. It's great to have such wonderful teachers and professors as you, because today's world where we see is a very different changing scenario. Thank you for your talk. Back to you, Colonel.
Thank you, and very well said, Prerna. Thank you very much. This another, Professor Mani and all participants, this joke of the week is also one healthy tradition, and that we always end with this. And we have expert Rotarian Sandeep Bass, who is a past president, and he is honorable advisor our board. So over to Sandeep ji.
Thank you, Colonel sir. Thank you once again, and good morning and welcome once again to everybody. हमारा जो एजुकेशन सिस्टम है उसमें पढ़ाया तो बहुत जाता है, लेकिन सचमुच लोग सीखते हैं कि नहीं सीखते हैं वो एक क्वेश्चन मार्क रह जाता है.
सही बात.
Over a period of time, I've realized that instead of opening the horizons of people in the way they think, it tunnels their view into getting themselves branded that this is all what I'm capable of, unfortunately. तो जब मैं उसके बारे में सोच रहा था तो मेरे को एक बहुत पुराना जोक याद आ गया, शायद आप लोगों ने सुना भी हो, लेकिन it would be good humor to remember that. तो एक बार एक कॉन्फ्रेंस हुई, एक सिंपोजियम हुआ रादर, कि सब हस्बैंड अपनी बीवी से डरते हैं, इसको चेंज करना है, हस्बैंड्स को बताना है कि भाई बीवी से डरने की जरूरत नहीं है. तो प्रोफेसर मनी जैसे कुछ एंथुसियास्टिक लोग थे, उन्होंने इसको अरेंज किया, 2 दिन का बड़ा सा एक प्रोग्राम अरेंज किया गया और करीब 2000 पार्टिसिपेंट्स उसमें आए. दे वांटेड टू लर्न हाउ नॉट टू बी स्केयर्ड ऑफ देयर वाइफ्स. जब 2 दिन खत्म हो गए तो सोचा गया कि एक टेस्ट किया जाए कि हाउ मेनी पीपल एक्चुअली गॉट बेनिफिट आउट ऑफ इट. तो जो कोऑर्डिनेटर था उसने स्टेज से अनाउंस किया कि भाई जो लोग अभी सोचते हैं कि वो अपनी वाइफ से अभी नहीं डरेंगे वो लेफ्ट साइड में खड़े हो जाएं, और जो सोचते हैं कि वो अपनी वाइफ से अभी भी डरते हैं वो राइट साइड में खड़े हो जाएं. तो हमें ये पता लगेगा हमारा प्रोग्राम कितना इफेक्टिव रहा. And to the surprise of everybody moved to the right side. And they were in the shock. इतने में एक छोटा सा खेचू सा आदमी जो है वो जाकर लेफ्ट साइड में खड़ा हुआ. तो ऑर्गेनाइजर वाज प्लीज कि चलो यार एक आदमी तो है जिसमें कुछ तो गट्स पैदा हुए. उसको स्टेज पे बुलाया गया, गार्लैंड पहनाया गया और बोला गया कि आप 2 शब्द बोलिए लोगों को कि कैसे आप इंस्पायर हुए इसके लिए. तो बोला क्योंकि आपने मेरे को बहुत कम टाइम दिया है बात करने को, तो बहुत शॉर्ट में आपको बता देता हूँ. जब आपने अनाउंस किया तो मैंने अपनी वाइफ को फोन किया पूछने को भाई मैं लेफ्ट में खड़ा हूँ कि राइट में खड़ा हूँ. तो उसने बोली लेफ्ट में जाके खड़ा हो.
Great. Thank you very much. It's already 9:30, so not taking much time and closing the meeting on time. I wish stay healthy, happy, safe and blessed. Please allow me to adjourn the meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Wish you all the best. And next week, we are having club. Professor Mani, you want to say something?
No, no, not at all. Please go
Okay. Okay. So next week, 16, we are having a club assembly, and 18 we are having the club fellowship, and this is also the physical form. So Prerna will send notification, and I will request the all these team members to please confirm about this. So not taking much time, once again having said good day to all of you. Please allow me to end the meeting. So have I permission, Professor Mani?
Namaskar. Thank you so much.
Namaskar. Thank you very much. Thank you.